Hi, everybody. I'm Lucy Biggers. I am going to be moderating this wonderful panel today, and I am so excited because I am actually friends with everyone on this panel. We've all hung out, we've all done stories together, and what I think is so great about this panel is how all three of you are trying to solve the same problem, which is our waste problem that's out of control, our broken recycling system in this country as well, and you're coming at it from different angles. And I think that that's so cool. You're bringing different people, different parties into the conversation, different stakeholders, and so it's so inspiring. And I think we're gonna have a fun conversation because everybody's bringing that unique conversation. So I'm Lucy Biggers. I am the host of One Small Step, which is a series that focuses on sustainability and the solutions that we can find to solve all of the problems facing our planet, climate change, our waste problem, the issues with our recycling system, like I said. I'm really fascinated by solutions, and I love to do this for my job because I get to meet amazing people like who are on our panel right now. And I think the people who are trying to solve the problems facing our planet are some of the most innovative, inspiring, creative people there are, and they care. They have big hearts. So this is going to be a lot of fun. Before we jump in and I just do a quick intro of our amazing panelists, I want to shout out the sponsors for today's event. We've got the Starrett Lehigh building, which is located in West Chelsea, Manhattan, and they are the home and birthplace of the marketplace of the future. The building has replaced 8 miles of windows to conserve energy, offered free building-wide composting, installed a rooftop garden with bees, love, and continue to be supporters of this day. Pildora is a community and one-stop shop for sustainable fashion, accessories, clean beauty, featuring over 100 impactful brands from over 25 countries. And you can visit their website, pildora.com, and also visit them on the Lifestyle Pavilion. And then Just Salad, which we all know is a US restaurant chain. They're also the first restaurant chain to have a carbon label on their menu, which makes it easier to make sustainable choices when you're ordering. I need to check that out. It's like the new calories, the carbon. But I want to have everyone say hi. So we've got Tom Zaki, who's the founder of TerraCycle and Loop. I've done videos with Tom twice because he's that innovative. I've featured your work twice, and everyone knows TerraCycle is the company that recycles everything. Loop is a great initiative by a ton of companies that are, taking advantage of reusables. And I'm so excited to have you here today, Tom. Hi.
Hey, how you doing? Glad to be here.
Great to see you. And next up, we've got Sarah Pageau, who is the CEO and founder of Blueland. She won Shark Tank. She is all around badass. And I was like saying that, I'm like, can I kind of swear? No. Blueland is trying to solve the problem of waste creation by having these reusable bottles, the tablets, you put them into water, they create cleaning solution. We know that we're all going through these cleaning bottles, hundreds of them, especially during COVID. So you're more relevant and important than ever. And also we have Anna DeLuco, who is the co-founder of Sure We Can, which is a nonprofit based in Brooklyn. Sure We Can is amazing. I was just there last month and we did a story together featuring your amazing work, bringing all these canners who are taking advantage of the New York City bottle bill that gets them 10 cents or 10 cents? No, we wish 10 cents, 5 cents for every can that they turn in. So thank you guys. Anna, thank you so much for being here. Can I hear you? Oh.
Yes, thank you.
Yay, this is awesome. I was so excited when I saw this panel because I was like, oh, this is going to be great. Everyone on here is awesome. So I want to say that there's a Q&A section. So if anyone wants to enter Q&A, you can do that, and we can read those out later, which is going to be awesome. So are you all ready for some questions? Awesome. Okay, so I want to start with Sarah. So Blueland, you've just blown up over the last few years that you've been around, and I think then COVID-19 came. Anecdotally for me, all of a sudden I'm pulling out the Clorox wipes. I was like, I'm ashamed of what I was doing. And so I'm curious for you at Blueland, where your mission is, cleanliness and also like the zero waste circular lifestyle. What was that adjustment for you? How were your customers dealing, and how were you guys dealing with COVID? How have you responded to this event?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's been interesting because we've been out in the market for just about a year and a half. So to go through a pandemic and to be again in the pretty fortunate seat, I guess, to be in the cleaning industry given everything that's happening. But overnight, we saw a surge in interest in cleaning, which we obviously did not expect when we started this business. We actually started with cleaning products for Blueland because it was a low interest category. It was like an easier category that we thought we could get people to switch into versus, there's categories like shampoo or toothpaste or deodorant that are more either high performance like thresholds, or people are just like very hesitant to put something in their mouth, etc. And so that's why we started with like hand soap and multi-surface cleaner, because it's like factually proven to be a category people are very willing to switch brands. They're kind of channel agnostic, etc. And so all of a sudden there was like this huge demand and interest in cleaning and how to clean properly. Early days of COVID, kind of like you alluded to, it was interesting because our core customer all of a sudden, our very environmentally conscious customer all of a sudden was potentially willing to trade non-toxic claims or eco-friendly claims for disinfecting claims. And it makes sense because there was definitely a period of a month or two where we were all very confused and we weren't sure where or how we could get COVID. And so being a DTC company, definitely enabled us to easily shift our messaging on our site and email and social to address these concerns, which was really helpful, and just, reassure consumers that, even as a non-toxic and eco-friendly brand like ours, like these products are still effective.
Totally. I mean, I remember that fear so much. I think we were all kind of like, what are we doing? And I think I had a realization where like when it becomes that like kind of survival mode, all of a sudden
100%.
you're like sustainability, you're like, I don't have enough space in my brain to think about sustainability, which is challenging, I think, for all of us because we want everyone to be sustainable first 24/7. But what I think is great about everybody on this panel is that you're meeting people where they are. You're making sustainability approachable, whether it's incentivizing people with the canning prices and bringing a place where people can turn in their cans, or what you're doing at Loop, Tom, with delivering reusables to people's doors. So I'd be interested, Tom, for you, how do you feel like people have adapted it? Has any fears around like the cleanliness of reusables like hurt you, or has it been, people are like, we're good, we'll still use it?
Yeah, I think what's really interesting about sort of the conversation of COVID vis-a-vis reusables is that I would sort of say that there's like a fork in the road, that's occurred. And, what's important in reuse is any reuse model requires a durable container. But then there's the question of really what is the modality through which that container is refilled. So you have, wonderful companies like Blueland where you keep the container at home and you get concentrate that you dilute yourself. So it's called that like a you refill for yourself at home model. And I imagine that's probably hasn't been really affected by COVID concerns because it's your bottle, you keep it at home. Then there are models like Loop where we say, just, basically throw out the bottle, get your deposit back, and then we will clean it and sell it to someone else. And I'm very proud to say that we were, the type of cleaning apparatuses and systems we use, we have deep partnerships with Ecolab and others, they were protecting against way worse pathogens than COVID. So we've actually seen a growth in sales during this time. And we just launched our third market in Loop just a month ago in the UK with Tesco. And it was one of the best results in the middle of COVID. And so, no worries. Where I think it's been really disastrous, and really unfortunately so, is in the consumer refills for themselves in store environment. So think like taking your coffee cup to a Starbucks, taking your reusable shopping bag to a store, taking that cleaner package and going to a dispensing station and maybe like a package-free type store. Those models, most retailers have paused and turned off, their platforms as it pertains to consumer-driven refill because of the fear of, contagion and so on. And this is not just, like dispensing stations for cleaners. It could be, the big bin of cashews or gummy bears or, whatever that you can just, buy bulk. And, in working with a lot of major retailers, I don't know how quickly these will come back. I really hope that they will, come back, but it could be years. And the problem is that that's challenging for entrepreneurs, whose businesses rely on those types of models. So it's created, I would say, a great fork in the road where either it's been sort of unaffected or very deeply negatively affected. And I just hope that that will normalize.
Yeah, I think we're all learning so much from this experience. It's thrown a wrench in everything. We're all reflecting on our systems and our values and what we prioritize. And I think I want to go to Anna, who, you know, you have your canners and Sure We Can, who is an amazing site in Brooklyn where you have hundreds of canners coming in every week, no matter what, you know, in the thick of it. Because also for a lot of your canners, this is their livelihood. So I'm over here privileged. I'm like, I wasn't thinking about sustainability, but like, I know that I'm coming from that place of privilege. But for a lot of your canners, they were still out there. And how were they impacted by just, you know, the shutdown of New York?
Right. Yes. On one side, they were not shut down because they remain as essential, although they are informal force, but the fact that the city consider recycling as essential working people, all this epidemic crisis, they continue doing. I mean, some of them were afraid that the police may stop them on the street, but never happened. And we told them, you are essential workers, so don't be afraid. And that was something that they could continue. What it has affected there very drastically, and even Sure We Can as Redemption Center, is that the closing of so many bars, restaurants, which is in our region are so many. Plus the summer is our peak time, and yet all the events, parades, all this park use, this has been reduced in such a way that really, I mean, we have reduced the revenue and the volume we get in half. And we are really struggling at this moment to survive because of that. So that was, I mean, the biggest side effect for them and for the organization as such that I can see.
Yeah, it's so challenging. And I think that it really points to the fact that we need a resilient system. We need a system that can survive these shifts in, you know, whatever the next pandemic or disaster will be. And so my question, maybe I can go back. I'll start with you, Anna. Like, what do you think that you need to make a place like Sure We Can, like, protect you? Because right now you have a really important service that you're doing. You're recycling cans and bottles in a really efficient way, or very clean product that you're creating. But you said like that, like, you know, your revenue is going down and your challenge. What would you need to protect you? Is it support from the government, or what is it?
As you know, we are really struggling just to survive in the lot, which is so essential for us to have a physical place. We cannot do online this work. And so, I mean, even today, we receive a very, very bad feedback for the owners. And literally, we are allowed here to be until February. I can say it. We could stay 2 or 3 months, but literally, legally, we only stay. So this is one thing that is, aside from the half of the revenue and struggling with the regular expenses, the fact that we won't be able, or we don't know how to manage, and we know how difficult it is to find a new place. I will start to throw some kind of calls to those of you present. For example, I remember our chairperson, Tina, was saying, Anna, we should talk to Tom from TerraCycle, you know, because they are doing great. And just now listening to Tom, I said, wow, if we could find a system for the refillable, reusable, which is our dream, because we know that the one we are doing is better than the regular recycling of the city, but it still is a minor evil, so to say. And the real thing is to reuse the containers as much as they can be used. And only those who are really broken to really go into recycling. But recycling should be a minimal part. So, but as I said, if we receive a hand from any of those who really had established a good industry for that, we might be able to cooperate with them and do something. And right now we are trying to work in improving the bottle bill. So instead of the 5 cents, which is maybe 70, 80 years ago. It goes to 10 cents. And I mean, the three and a half handling fee to go to 5 cents. You see that we talk about really cents to survive. And yet it's so difficult for us to force the legislators to listen to our cry and say, what is 5 cents more? What is 1.5 cents more? So, I mean, I told Ryan when I was going to introduce myself, I said, well, I will tell them that we are coming from the underside of the city. Like, I mean, I was so grateful that we invited us, but we are in that side that just to breathe, it takes effort, no? So I'm happy.
And I think if everyone who's watching isn't familiar with Sure We Can, like they are this awesome nonprofit and people are turning in cans, 5 cents a can, and they're making their livelihood off of this. They're making $100 a week, or if that, and that's the best canners. And so you're providing this a really amazing economic job creator for the most vulnerable. Most of your canners like in their 80s, and they're mostly immigrants, like, or 60s to 80s years old. These people are not getting a job somewhere else, which I think is really interesting, because this bottle bill, this policy that put 5 cents on a can, has created all these jobs. And so I would open it up to you, Tom. Maybe you'll have an opinion, because I know you have a lot of big ideas around like what kind of policies could we see to support places like a Sure We Can. Is it how do we incentivize reusables or you know, de-incentivize single use? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And Anna, do reach out to us. Maybe we can think about ways to help out. And, please, I look forward to chatting with you. Lucy, to answer your question, you know, so what's really interesting, if you think about the economic motivations, the big step back that we have to take on recycling is that the only thing that will be recycled are things that are profitable to recycle. It's not about can we recycle something, it's about can we make money recycling something. And the forms of legislation that will increase recycling rates without question all over the world are deposit return schemes. Those are the examples of the bottle bill, and or EPR legislation, which is like packaging taxes. Those are the two primary forms of legislation. Now, the challenge, like, so it's so interesting. If you look at today, what's happening in the world, Western Europe is really leaning into passing a lot of DRS legislation. UK, you're going to see it broadly. I mean, we were just on the phone with a big British retailer a few hours ago.
DRS? Sorry.
Deposit return schemes. My apologies.
Oh, sorry. Okay, now I know.
Yeah. Sorry, I jumped to the acronym a bit too fast. But those are really being leaned in Western Europe, and you're going to see, and they always increase recycling rates because it does exactly the type of work, it facilitates the type of work Anna is able to do. Now, if you jump into emerging markets where, you know, waste pickers are making a few dollars a day, they're just the material value of the can or the PET bottle is, you know, creates that type of livelihood. Now, here's the big white elephant in the room. America is going the opposite way on deposit return schemes. They're actually canceling bottle bills all over the place. The logic for why is that it raises the price of the content, and that is true. Like, let's just put it on the table. It will make your soda more expensive, and so there's an argument. You know, think now, especially in a recessionary environment, you know, there is a lot of people who are going to argue for, you know, keep the cost of living down and don't pass anything that's going to increase the price of goods. And any legislation that increases recycling rates or taxes packaging will be seen in the price of the product. It should be, it absolutely, because that's the real cost of the product, but that's the tension. And you're going to see in the United States today, I don't think, it doesn't matter what you know, party is elected in November, it's going to be much more economic focused regulation than environmental focused regulation. And many times they do go in contrast with each other. And the other factors that are playing in on this is that oil is cheap and is being suppressed by COVID. And by oil being suppressed, it makes plastics recycled plastics less valuable, which makes, you know, the economics of recycling even worse. You know, the city of Philadelphia used to get paid over $60 a ton for its recyclables in 2012. Today, they have to pay over $100 a ton to recycle the same stuff. So what is Philly and cities all over the world considering? Scaling back recycling. Now, the one nice thing, and I'll conclude on a positive point, is that in reusables, one of the amazing things about a durable reusable container is that it can be a significantly more valuable object. I mean, look at the incredibly beautiful packaging Blueland has. It is mind-blowingly cool. You know, it's beautiful. But you can do that because you don't have to keep buying a bottle over and over and over. Whether you incentivize it by, you know, having it at home and refilling it with tablets, whether you incentivize it through a deposit mechanism, it really creates an upgrade of where it's a much more beautiful experience and way more sustainable. And, you know, in Loop, which is, you know, is run through a deposit mechanism. I mean, we are, you know, Loop is a deposit system. It's just at a much bigger level than you know, than the 5 or 10 cents. We're seeing 96% return rates, 96%. And that's, you know what, get your money back, forget sustainability, you know? So there's something interesting in that to bake out, because I think reuse, you know, can behave in the same way.
I think that you bring up such a good point of the intersection between these desires, it's economy, environment, and sometimes they're in contrast. I think the perfect situation is when they actually are aligned, like you're saving money. And Sarah, I feel like you would, like, this is your wheelhouse. Like, I'm curious to know, like, how many of your customers actually care about the environment, or are they coming to you from some other place? Because my reason why I ask that is because I think we all care about the environment, but spoiler alert, a lot of people don't. And so I think having a successful sustainability program is you're getting people to buy in for other reasons, like Tom mentioned, the pricing, or maybe they're getting the money back from turning in the can. So Sarah, what have you seen from your consumers, your customers?
Yeah. I mean, it's always been our thesis that, you know, most all people do have good intentions, right, and care about the environment. It was just sort of that incremental, how do we then just get them over the hump to do you know, what we believe is the right thing. And that's why, you know, we have been focused on so many of these things and these misconceptions of perceptions as well as reality sometimes of, you know, eco products being more work, more expensive and less effective. And on the price point front, yeah, from the beginning, we've been really focused on trying to get our refill tablets to that $2 price point, because in our ideal of ideals, like, we wanted to have a product out there that was money saving on top of all these other, you know, amazing things. And we believe that that really would help us extend our reach beyond just folks that, you know, would do anything and pay anything, you know, to do right by the environment. And that certainly has played out. I think it's been nice since we launched, actually, you know, proud to say that we've hit up like all 50 states every single week. So, you know, again, a testament to this being a more mass market friendly product, which is why, you know, the opportunities like Shark Tank were really interesting to us, because we thought that, again, the price point made this a very accessible product. But certainly so many hurdles to trying to get to that, you know, so many hurdles that, you know, we've all faced, you know, Tom, Anna as well, in terms of, you know, the investment that we have to make and the investment in infrastructure that still has to be done to achieve those types of price points to make it go a lot more accessible.
Yeah, that makes sense. But it is true. And I think I was a little too dismissive of you're saying, you're like, everyone, their intentions are good. And I was like, they don't care. It's probably somewhere in the middle.
Somewhere in the middle,
but I think we're at this time. It's so interesting. I think every day it's a country or it's a Fortune 500 company coming out with their carbon neutral like statements. Like, everyone under the sun is now going to be carbon neutral by like 2040. It's wild. I'm like, are we going to keep them? I don't know. Cause I think we're hitting this tipping point, like, where I actually do agree with you, Sarah, that like the caring about the planet is no longer like a nice to have. I think so many people are focused on this that it's part of like your branding. You have to have it in there. But everybody at this table actually is legitimate. You're not greenwashing and just getting on the bandwagon. You've been doing this work for years. So I think we'll hold everyone accountable to see if they can reach those goals.
It's funny you say that, because I feel like I'm too close to that. So I've been very skeptical as well, but it was really encouraging to see. There was like a Mintel report that came out this year based on data on surveys that they did this spring. So again, in the COVID environment, and for the first time in the history of that survey, people actually cited environmental health as the #1 reason why they were opting for non-toxic cleaning products over human health and safety.
Wow.
Which was surprising, right? Yeah, totally.
I don't believe that. I think
okay.
no.
So maybe we're all skeptics, but I saw it and I was like,
no, to be fair to it, we've seen this with, you know, the CI, Consumer Insights, that we've been doing with a lot of these major, you know, producers, and they really lean in, and people are really good human beings when they're asked. but
Mm.
we are selfish, horrible people, all of us, when we act and shop. Like, if I would argue, I imagine a lot of your consumers buy your product because it's beautiful. And
Absolutely. No,
that's
for sure,
exactly.
for sure.
It's like a beautiful item in your home. You would decant your creamer into your bottles. Like, we notice this a lot too, is that I think, Lucy, you're right, is that people are like leaning towards environment, but when we actually could purchase decisions, they're entirely always selfish. It's all about value, convenience, and then features and benefits. Now, sustainability for some is a feature and a benefit, but at best it's a subtopic amongst those three major topics. Like, even, in Loop, we noticed when we did surveys, I was hoping everyone would buy stuff because it's reusable. When you actually dig in and understand, most people are buying the stuff because it's incredibly beautiful. And then they go, oh, and it's nice that it's reusable, right? And what it is, whatever.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
Whoever
It
gets
doesn't
to
matter
do
why
it.
you do
Yeah.
it, but the motivation factor is really important, because then you can play into it more and understand what is really moving people, right? But it's like the organic food movement. It's primarily people buy organic food, not for the butterflies and the bees, but because it's healthier.
Right. Yeah, the incentive is interesting. And like, it's like, yeah, I'm happy to be a cynic over here and be like, whatever gets you to do the right thing. And I think that goes back to Anna, like you're talking about, like having a 10 cents on a bottle, 25 cents on a wine bottle. I would be bringing those wine bottles. I would be a millionaire. But I think that, like, in our disposable society in the US, I feel like we just have unlimited land to landfill. That's kind of how we relate to waste. But I would love, Anna, if you could paint for me kind of your vision of how we could fix our system, because I think that there's something there with the bottle deposit bills. When I did a video on you last month, I like really got jazzed about this idea. Like, we need to jack up that number. What do you think? $1.
Yes. In fact, tomorrow we have a beautiful activity and a meeting of a task force of canners to advocate for the change for 5 to 10. And we have to ask them, do you want to change for 5 to 10? And we always find at least one or two who will say, no, don't change, keep it in 5. Because if it is 10, more people will return their own cans and bottles, so they won't leave anything for us on the street.
That's a good point. And because I'm going to be collecting all my cans. That's such a good point.
There is always, when I listen to Tom, I mean, their deposit is worthy to return, but we won't find that for us. Or ideally, just to say, going back to the deposit system, which I really believe is the most effective, because for one reason or for another, I just try to get back what I leave it as deposit in one store. And we don't do that for 5 cents, it's not worthy, but people will do for 25 cents for sure. And I remember our counselor telling us in one hearing, what about if we put $1 per bottle, per bottle of wine? I said, well, you yourself will bring all your bottles to the liquor store if it is $1. So it's that kind of how we could create, and in that sense, I love the title of this gathering, the market of the future, or the future market. How could create systems in which environmentally is good for everybody, it still responds to all these selfish aspects that Tom describes very well, and all of us knows that are part of our being. And yet we are able to include, to cooperate. I mean, there are a lot of people who can do certain jobs and are needed in the whole marketplace, in the whole system. If we only find a way that, I mean, we give a little bit of our selfishness and our greediness, whatever it is there, and we said, why? This work could be done by this and this sector, which are very willing to do that because they were doing even when it was 5 cents. So, and it's not to diminish the value of anybody, but each of us have a different role in this market and this society. That's why even when we were talking about circular economy, a friend of mine shared about circular community, and I jumped into it. I said, yeah, economy is only one aspect. What we need is to develop a circular community in which all of us have a part, all of us are subjects, and we can interact and help each other to live better without losing the interest of each group. So this is ideal. How to reach there, we have to work for it.
I feel like I'm curious. I feel like Tom, you had something to say, maybe just talking about like playing off of what Anna was saying around rethinking these, I don't know, our infrastructure. There was a moment there I was like, I feel like you're going to chime in, but maybe I lost it.
And I think the important part here is that, you know, it's a very tough question, you know, that I think Anna raises, because, you know, there's this one area of inclusion and how to serve, you know, people living in poverty. And the idea of waste related work is very synonymous with people living in poverty, and especially even outside this country. If you look at Brazil, India, there's millions and millions of people who are waste pickers. And you know, we do a lot with our foundation in those regions, and there, you know, you know, a big part of the question is how do we elevate, you know, folks, you know, into outside those realms, into other pieces. So I think now, but then on the other side, and I hear very clearly what Anna's saying, you know, this idea that if I raise the deposit, you know, that may remove that market, you know, from folks. And one of the reasons, you know, Loop, which is a little bit more a higher end, I would say, you know, similar to Blueland, sees such really high rates of return is our average deposit is $1, maybe $2, right? So the motivation to return, and then if you're returning bags of products, you know, your bag could be, one consumer bag could be, you know, 10, 20, 30, $40 of value, and that creates that very high rate of return. But you know, what I would encourage here is we need to sort of think of these in chunks, and like, you know, the ideal goal is there is no waste. If there is no waste, then Anna's business doesn't exist. TerraCycle on my end doesn't exist, but maybe that's a good thing. And then we have to think about other ways to solve very important issues of social inclusion, and creating societies where all, you know, folks, you know, doesn't matter race, creed, you know, income level, are valued and taken care of. And it somehow, you know, I would decouple those overall questions. And a big part of this is important because we are, you know, we talked about the effects of COVID on reuse, but the effects of, you know, COVID on recycling are disastrous right now. You know, because of that oil price thing I mentioned earlier, most recycling systems are going to come back worse after COVID than we left them. Basically, if, you know, you're listening, that means less things in your local recycling bin will be recyclable. And we are wildly increasing our purchase of disposable products. Like you, Lucy, are now losing your wipes, as you said, you know, regretfully, but you're using them, right? You know what I mean? Right. You know, but it's happening.
I'm so bad.
Right. No, it's okay. It's, you know, but I'm so glad that you said that at the very beginning, because it is exactly what's happening. You know, it's like people are, you know, disposing, you know, their gloves, their face masks, their wipes. It's pinging the heart, right, as it should, but we're still doing it. And this is only going to get way worse. You know, if we were worried about ocean plastic and, you know, and all these different things, you know, back when we banned the straw in great, you know, euphoria, it's way worse now, and it's going to get worse. And I think we need to really think about, you know, how to create the right motivations to have everyone, whether they're wealthy or not, wanting to go out and collect and make sure these things don't end up in unfortunate outputs.
I think it's a resource. I think that there's a place where even if there is waste, what is happening to that waste? How is it getting sorted? How is it getting processed? I mean, you're doing this at TerraCycle, but I think of it as like, it's an American made resource. And I think as we look at things like fossil fuels, we're not going to have them forever. Even if we transition away from them, and in an ideal world, we're not running on fossil fuels, we still need, like, I don't know. I just think there's still going to be a place for fossil fuels, even if it's scaled back. And it's like, can we make that from another product that is our waste product? How do we make it circular? Like, I think thinking about waste as a resource instead of thinking about it as something that is right now, I think, not valued in our society. Obviously, everyone I think here values it, but I think it needs to be valued. And you've been on this train forever, Tom. Like you started TerraCycle exactly for that reason. But I want to go to Sarah, and I want to ask you, what do you think are like the biggest challenges for getting a reusable model like you have at Blueland to a bigger audience? And maybe Tom, you could also chime in after, because I know you also work in that reusable space. How do we get more people on this reusable train?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, as we touched on, I think pricing is a big one, right? Because, you know, reuse is definitely considered oftentimes like this big upfront investment. And as much as, you know, we try to spread the message and beat the drum of like the beauty of reuse also, as Tom mentioned, one is you can, you know, own a much better product, right? Because, you know, the supplier can invest in that product. You as a consumer can invest in that product because you never have to continue buying these single-use products. And, you know, we keep beating the drum of like, again, the beauty of reuse is you actually do, not just with our products, but across a range of products, like save money in the long run because you're not buying Ziploc bags and saran wrap and, you know, sponges that you need to toss gross plastic sponges that you have to toss every month. But that said, you know, even that initial price point investment, understandably, can be, you know, a real hurdle for people. And I think, you know, when you back that up, you know, that pricing is also a lot higher because of kind of the infrastructure that's currently in place, right? So like for us, for example, you know, the tablet was one thing. We thought the tablet was going to be the hardest thing to develop. You know, it's the first time that anyone's out making like a cleaning tablet or a soap tablet. And the reason why we went with a tablet instead of a liquid solution was that in our minds, we're like, oh, okay, so this tablet is going to be dry. So then we could package it in something sustainable, like your refills in paper instead of plastic. And surely we thought that part we thought it was going to be downhill from there. Like once you can create a tablet, like wrapping it was not going to be a problem. And then finding that wrapper ended up being like a year plus long journey. Yeah, I know. And again, that's one of the things we went into. We're like, surely there's going to be an example in like food and beverage, like so many packaged snacks out there that like, surely there's something that must be packaged in a material that's paper-based or that's compostable. But still, I can pretty confidently say there's like 0 to very, very few options, even if you were to stroll down, like, you know, your local Whole Foods, for example. And so, you know, one, like tracking down that material, we had to go outside of the US. We actually had to turn to Europe to source a material that was, you know, strong enough to resist heat and humidity to preserve our tablets, but also to withstand machinery that's typically been designed for plastic. And then, I mean, it didn't just stop there. And then it was like, fine, like we identified some of this machinery. We ended up having to buy that machinery ourselves, which is, you know, not typical for a startup to have to do that. Usually you can go to a contract manufacturer, someone else will have made that investment. And, you know, those just add, you know, so many barriers for companies like us who have good intentions that, you know, want to potentially package their products in better materials to be able to do that, because then we had to like not just find the machine, we had to then like go buy the machine.
And you did it though. So
yeah.
What is the material now? Is it compostable? Like
yes, it's compostable, FSC certified. Yeah, paper based.
I would have given up. I'm like, all right, sorry folks, you're getting single use. No, just kidding. That's amazing. I think that like nobody has appreciation for how much R&D goes into creating these products too. I mean, you brought up 5 issues I never would have thought of. And so when we talk about infrastructure, I mean, that all of this is going to have to change if we're going to want to, you know, fix our problems with waste, ocean plastic. I think I'm going to ask, and that's a great question, Tom. I wanted to ask you, because Sarah, that was you brought up so many interesting points. I learned so much from your answer. Tom, what about the challenges for you in expanding Loop?
Yeah, so Loop is you know, a little different in its approach on reuse, in that we're trying to create a platform for reuse where we're not the product and we're not the retailer. So Loop is all about enabling products to become reusable. You know, like your Tide laundry detergent, your Haagen-Dazs ice cream, you know, big guys like that, all the way to startups, who then work with us to enable reusable versions of their products. We define it as 10 uses or more. And then we work with retailers, you know, here in the US, like Ulta Beauty or Walgreens, Kroger, or, you know, a bunch of retailers all over the world, who then impregnate this into their, at the beginning, online stores, but starting early next year, you're going to start seeing it in physical stores as well. We even announced our partnership with McDonald's, for example, 2 weeks ago on Loop, where they're going to do reusable food service packaging, like coffee cups. And so for us, it's very similar to what Sarah was saying. It's scale, scale, scale. And so we consciously are working, I mean, there's about 100 conglomerates that are part of Loop now, to try to get these large organizations whose middle name is scale. I mean, if anyone can scale, it's going to be the P&Gs of the worlds and the, you know, those sort of, and the Nestle's. and then really to work aggressively with retailers to make sure that the distribution is there, because it's like one begets the other, right? Now you have to have enough products to make the assortment work, 100, 200, 300 products, but then you have to have enough stores so that those manufacturers are motivated and can see a line of sight to profitability, which means thousands and thousands of stores. Now, as that comes together, the beauty is it becomes sort of self-fulfilling. Self-fulfilling for the brands, because there's enough scale that they can see a line of sight to profitability. And for them, there's no real change. The only change is, are they going to fill that content into a single-use package or a reusable package? But everything else is effectively the same. For the retailer, it's generally the same. They're just selling a good, but they don't have to deal with anything else. And then for the individual, you get the products. So we don't have to worry about, a huge exercise that I'm sure, Sarah, you have to do, which is teaching people about your great product. I mean, that's a huge amount of work. So, the idea here is, take all that away and just try to ask one simple question. Would you like your favorite product at your favorite retailer in single use or reusable? And because of that, we don't make opinions on who we work with. And in fact, if Loop has had any criticism, it's been, why are you working with some of these organizations? But you know what? That's exactly the point, because I want to meet, the consumers where they are. Then once we have had that occur, then maybe we can start shifting, the content. And a good example of that is when Häagen-Dazs first launched in Loop, 40% of the flavors they put out were vegan, which I was like celebrating in a big way, right? Because they were leaning in. It said, they were saying if like someone cares about reusable, maybe they're going to care about, not involving animals in the supply chain. But for us, it's that scale, but it's, there's this very much this sort of, self-fulfilling prophecy in that, and same with the retailers. Like the reason it's very important for us to be working with many retailers is this way you can buy your Loop sort of package anywhere and return it anywhere. You can buy your cup, cup of coffee at McDonald's, in a Loop reusable cup, but then return it to a Kroger. And now the complexity and the challenge, right, because that all sounds good, is that there is this like huge number of these large organizations, and you have to move them all together, because you can't launch, in a retailer and have and not have those 200 products shipping and being in stock from all these different manufacturers. And that is the behemoth work involved in it. But I'd say, knock on wood, so far so good.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's such a big undertaking that you're doing. But I think even from hearing about the launch of Loop to now you're launched and you're saying you're having great participation, you have 96% return rate. And so even now the pieces are coming into place where it's becoming reality. I heard this really great quote the other day that was, less thought about solutions today are creating our environmental problems of tomorrow. Which, it's an informal quote, it's nowhere, but I was having a conversation with someone and I wrote that down, because I think when we talk about the circular economy, that's the point of this conversation. I'm thinking, okay, if it's aluminum cans, glass bottles, these are heavier. Yeah. You're having shipping, you're having washing, you're having more trips back and forth. And so all of a sudden, when you crunch the numbers, how much better is it than just having a super thin piece of plastic that went to a landfill where it's just going to be sitting? Like,
yeah, it's a good question. I'd say, well, I want to address this in two ways. First, I will directly answer your question, but I think there's a bigger point that you've hit on, which is nothing that any of us have said here is the answer. The real fundamental question we have to ask ourselves, and I think we can only ask this as citizens, not as sort of business leaders, is our fundamental, as humanity, our relationship with consumption. We just buy too much shit, way too much stuff. And there's no good product. In the end, Loop products have an impact, Sarah's products have an impact, all products have an impact. We're just discussing how much, right? And I'll answer that how much in a quick moment. But the bigger question is, we shouldn't buy as much stuff. That is really what we have to address, because we didn't until the 1950s, like gorge on consumption the way we are today. It is absurd. And every time you buy an object, you're voting for the planet to be just destroyed a little bit more. And it doesn't matter if it's fair trade, eco-friendly, organic, reusable, hippy-dippy in every possible way, it's still voting for impact. Because even that, amazing biodynamic, hugs and kisses farm could have been a forest if it wasn't a farm. And net, we have to fundamentally and it's so hard. I'm a hypocrite in this as well. But we have to, or if not, the planet is going to beat us up till it forces us to. Because someone asked me earlier in a conversation a few days ago, like, can we get to intrinsic sustainability? And I was like laughing. I'm like, no, it's not like, can we? We will. It's just how bruised and battered will we be when we get there, because the planet is going to force us to. And it's happening real time, whether it's pestilence or hurricanes or fire, it's going to happen. Now, the direct answer, so that's the preface, right? Now, yes, the direct answer to the question is reuse is many times better, but not always. And it really depends on the disposable package's starting point and the reusable package's finish point, like how much heavier and so on is it, and how many cycles can that reusable package get. And so there's sometimes, products like we just, Heinz ketchup, we launched in a glass bottle in the UK, where they already have that bottle in glass as well. Now we just have a reuse ecosystem on it, so it's better on the first use. But if you move from, say, a plastic shampoo bottle to an aluminum one, maybe it intersects and it becomes equal at the third use, and then the reusable is better, but before it is not. But take an absurd example. If you went from like a bag of potatoes that's in like a really thin, mesh, and you package those potatoes in like a thick stainless steel bin, that will never be better. So it's not that, there's no silver bullet here other than not buying stuff. And it does depend case by case.
And the more that I work in sustainability, the more my answers are, it depends. It's like, I cannot agree with you more. I mean, Anna, when I went to visit you, one thing I was super interested in was like how the glass bottles, like nobody wants them because all the old beer cans they're so heavy. So everybody, like if you talk to a canner, they want the aluminum cans and they want the water bottles because they're super light and they can transport them. No, not even Sims wants beer cans. And meanwhile, I'm like, I'm so great. I'm not using that PET. I'm using my glass. And then I'm like, oh, these are the unintended trade-offs. And so I think like Tom, you answered that so well. Like it depends is such a good point, obviously, where we can cut back. But Anna, what do you think about this conversation?
Yes.
And what do you want to chime in with?
I was so glad that a businessman like Tom, very successful in money matters and business, he's able to point to this point that is a matter of facing our fundamental misuse of resources. And I was happy with last year or somewhere with somebody put a prior R, I think it was, a year ago, which is refuse. I mean, I think we all have to talk much more of refuse. I mean, if I have only 2 feet, why should I need 30 pairs of shoes? If I have one body, why should I need 4 coats for winter and how many more for summer? I mean, that sense, and we have got, I am the oldest here, so I can talk with authority, that, I mean, I belong to a generation which we had lived, in which you have the coat for Sundays and for going to school, and period. And you have the shoes for special occasions and the school for regular days, and period. And when those broke, you do, and also repair. I mean, why to throw things when in fact you can repair? And that I believe, I mean, the refuse and the repair and the really check on ourselves that we can go to in this way. And because yes, we can be tempted and fool in ourselves, like, oh yeah, I'm very sustainable. We know. I'm so thankful for Tom comments on this. Thank you very much. This is.
Can I echo, Anna, what you just said? It's like, you know how like in especially in like makeup, there's always these tutorials on how you lather on 17 products, but like, and look beautiful in the end, right? Wouldn't it be amazing if we started putting out content on saying, here's how you can look beautiful with no products? I mean, in the end, like, there is no sustainable cosmetic. The sustainable cosmetic is, there is no cosmetics, I mean, and these are all new constructs that only came about recently, and this is the end point that I think we have to really resolve on.
Yeah, well, it's like the genie's out of the bottle. Like we're just, now that we have it, and maybe we've been talking about incentives. And so maybe there is a way that we can create incentives so that less consumption is cool. I mean, we're seeing it with COVID, not traveling, and then everyone's just wearing, their loungewear, but now everyone has a million pairs of loungewear. So we've got problems. We only have 9 minutes left. This has been so fun. I think we could all chat for forever, which I knew we would. And I'm glad everyone's getting connected. And that you can all follow up each other after this, but I wanted to go to the questions. Eric Eric asked this question, which is, I think the long-term solution is to mandate that manufacturers reclaim their materials through a reverse supply chain. And then the trash tax needs to be increased by 10x for both companies and individuals. What are your guys' thoughts? Is that kind of a plan something that you could see working?
I'll jump in just quickly. Absolutely. But we have to be prepared that our products will cost a lot more, right? If we're going to start embedding the real cost of products in products, the price will go up. And that's a wonderful thing. I always pray for high price goods because right now consumption is way too cheap. It is ridiculous that we can buy a t-shirt for $2. It shouldn't cost that much. You know, and back in sort of the generation Anna was speaking of, you know, an average person bought way fewer garments. You know, there's a great statistic, 1920, average female shopper bought 2 garments a year and used them on average 20 years. That's 100 years ago. Today, the same shopper, 66 apparel items a year, 3 times they are used before disposal. 3 uses before disposal. And why? Because they're so cheap. And when they become so cheap, they also break faster. So, you know, so the end point is we have to then, when we ask for these things, you know, like Eric has, we have to do 2 things. We have to ask for them, and then we have to say we are prepared to pay more, because you can't have the best, you can't have both, right? We have to accept, you know, a higher price of living, which will allow us to have a smaller life overall.
Yeah, these are really, really good points. I'm going to go to another question from Chloe, who's asking how we can educate our children about this. I mean, Sarah, you have kids, right?
Yes, I do. I do.
Do you have one on the way?
I have one on the way. in just 1 month, and I have a 3-year-old. I have a 3-year-old at home. I mean, I think kids, I think that's like the best place to start, because they are not rooted in a set of behaviors. They are not yet addicted to this consumption that is killing our planet, and they love learning new things. It's funny how much I hear from other parents as well, how kids are really the driving force in their household to take up, you know, much more sustainable practices, where their parents where the kids are coming home and be like, why do you need a water bottle? And, you know, being really excited about recycling. My son is so into composting and reducing his own food waste, like really, you know, is proud when he leaves, like, you know, nothing behind on his plate, or that, you know, really he really enjoyed doing plastic free July with me. We did it as a family. I know we were like collecting all of our trash, and yeah, he was very excited. My husband was less excited about we just kept all of our trash in the kitchen and in different piles, so that we could track it and see, you know, where we were creating the most waste. But I think you'd be surprised. I think kids are, you know, so flexible and so excited, and do kind of, you know, have such good intention. I think exposing them to nature is another, you know, great thing. I think there are studies out there that have confirmed sort of more exposure to nature, you know, helps people feel more connected to the environment and care more about the environment. But, you know, absolutely. And then think about, you know, Greta and the climate strikes and all that movement was just so inspiring for me personally, and just so powerful to hear, you know, her, and again, like my son's generation, be like, what are you guys doing? Like, you guys are like trading away our future for your convenience and your entertainment and your enjoyment, and to save a buck. And when you hear that, it's really, really heartbreaking. So
I love your answer so much, Sarah. The fact that you're about to have a baby too, I think you're like an expert on this topic, and everything you said is so true. Kids I think are the easiest to convince. We're the ones who need convincing. How to convince a college kid? But this has been so much fun, and I definitely want to shout out again Anna at Sure We Can, because y'all's work is so important, and your very existence in New York right now is threatened because your landlord is selling your lot that you've been on for a decade. You're the center of your community. For such a vulnerable population of people. So everybody watching, just check out Sure We Can. You can find them on Instagram, on their website, see how you can donate or support them. Spread awareness, because we need community organizations like Sure We Can, and then we need them now more than ever to have a resilient waste system. So I wanted to just plug that again, but you all are so amazing. Tom, Anna, Sarah, this is like one of my favorite panels I've ever been on, because I believe in all of you all so much, so authentically. I didn't have to fake a thing, not that I ever would. But you guys are really, really like just trailblazers in in your industry. So thank you for joining us today and bringing all your wisdom.
Thank you so much for having us. And Anna, please reach out.
Thank you for being a great
Yes,
host.
reach out.
Thank you so much. Yes, Tom, I will persecute you. Don't worry. This is
I
one
look
of
forward to
my.
it. I truly do.
Thank you.
Lovely.
Thank you, Sarah.
everybody.
I was
Thanks, guys.
enjoying listening to you all the time, but especially with the children.
Oh, we lost her. Oh.
You are a real mom. Thank you, Sarah.
Oh no, and thank you. I mean, it's so always so inspiring to hear your story. And thank you, Lucy, for always
It's a
being
love
a
fest.
lovely host.
so much.
You
Thank
are
you.
great. Yes.
Thank you, Chloe, for having us. This was really, really lovely, you
right.
guys. Have a great afternoon, everybody.
Thank
you.
you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Yes.